You're being transitioned out, Damon said, tapping his Apple Pencil against his iPad like he was scrolling through playlists instead of ending my career. The conference room smelled like recycled air and lemon disinfectant. He sat there in his navy linen blazer, the kind of wannabe tech executive uniform that screams, "I'm approachable," but I also read HBR once. His hair was slicked back with that corporate gloss sheen you could practically see your reflection in. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, even though I'd heard him perfectly. My brain just needed a reboot. "Offboarded," he repeated, flashing that sympathy-as-a-service smile people give when they've already rehearsed your funeral. "Nothing personal. We're flattening the structure. You know, less vertical siloing, more horizontal synergy." I watched him sip a green protein shake that looked like it had been blended with envy and arrogance. Beside him, the HR rep pretended to take notes while trying not to make eye contact, like guilt was contagious. "We think relationship manager roles are a little legacy," Damon added, using air quotes like a vlogger explaining toaster reviews. Legacy. I'd been with Apex Cloud Systems for 6 years. That healthcare platform letting hospitals exchange patient data securely across states? My vendor network. My compliance framework. I built that pipeline from scratch. Through 3 audits, a ransomware scare, and one terrifying AWS outage I personally contained before the board even knew. And now, apparently, I was obsolete. "I see," I said. My voice didn't crack, though my jaw did. "This isn't personal," he repeated, like that would make the guillotine sound friendlier. "If you're listening to this and thinking, 'Wow, that's cold,' yeah, go ahead, hit like, maybe even subscribe, because this is what corporate loyalty gets you. A smoothie-sipping sociopath quoting synergy while cutting payroll." Damon slid a manila envelope across the table like we were in a low-budget spy flick. Inside, exit paperwork, a pitiful severance, and a pre-written LinkedIn announcement I could feel free to personalize. Hashtags included, grateful for the journey, growth mindset. I didn't sign, not yet. I just stood up slowly, looked around at faces pretending not to exist. People I'd eaten stale conference bagels with, people I'd covered for when billing screwed up, all of them suddenly allergic to eye contact. "No hard feelings, right?" Damon asked. "None," I said, smiling. "But not the kind you give when you're fine. The kind you give when you remember something important that nobody else in the room knows." Damon was wrong about one thing. I wasn't just a relationship manager. I was the named technical contact on every single Apex Cloud vendor account. AWS, Google Cloud, SOC2 compliance, Cloudera audits, all of it. My name, my signature, not the company's, mine. And according to every dull, dusty policy buried in those agreements, removing the named contact without formal transition didn't just close an account. It triggered an automated compliance cascade. Silence, then outage, then contractual breach. I'd written those protocols myself. I knew every pin, every wire. So when I walked back to my desk, I didn't rage or cry. I just opened the admin portal, my offboarding checklist, the one I'd designed. One by one, I removed credentials. VPN root access, cleared. AWS master key, revoked. Compliance dashboard ownership, unassigned. A gentle pop-up appeared. "Please assign new contact within 48 hours to prevent service suspension." I left it blank, not out of spite, out of accuracy. Then I packed. No melodrama, no slammed drawers. Just my mug. Coffee first, chaos later. My cactus from HR, and my external drive. No one said goodbye. That's the funny thing about offices. The second you're labeled non-essential, you turn invisible. As I walked out past the glass wall, people pretended to be busy, tapping at keyboards like their lives depended on it. Maybe they did. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Outside, the Seattle sky glared white and cold. I wasn't angry. I was surgical. Because somewhere between their synergy session and my termination email, Damon had forgotten one thing. I was the system. Every audit, every certification, every failsafe that kept Apex Cloud from imploding depended on me being listed in one specific field, primary technical contact. And they'd just erased that field without a backup. I sat in my car for a long minute, engine off, watching the building's reflection shimmer across the windshield. The same place I'd dragged myself to in snowstorms, weekends, even Christmas Eve once, because Uptime didn't care about holidays. And now I was a checkbox, off-boarded. I almost laughed, not the bitter kind, the quiet, incredulous kind you make when the universe hands you irony so sharp it cuts clean. I drove home, dropped my tote on the kitchen counter, and opened my laptop. No revenge playlist, no wine-fueled rant, just methodical calm. I logged into my personal email, opened a blank draft, and started typing. "Hi, Lauren," I wrote. "Lauren Cook, Compliance Manager at Cloudera Systems. Just confirming that as of Tuesday, May 14th, 4:27 p.m. PT, I am no longer employed with Apex Cloud Systems. My admin credentials have been removed per protocol. Please update your records accordingly. Best, Leah Carter." I read it twice. No venom, no sarcasm. Just truth. Then hit send. That was it. The first domino. The beautiful thing about corporate policy is that it doesn't care about intent. It doesn't need you to push. It just needs time. I closed my laptop, took a long sip of coffee, and let the silence breathe. The thing nobody tells you about real revenge? When you do it right, it looks like professionalism. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Group chats, Slack pings, a few so sorry to hear messages that smelled like recycled guilt. I ignored them all. My work there was done. The system just hadn't realized it yet. By 9 a.m. Wednesday, the 48-hour clock had already started ticking. The automation I'd helped build was doing exactly what it was supposed to, verifying, escalating, flagging, counting down. Somewhere deep in a data center in Virginia, a small, soulless bot had just marked named contact, terminated, and triggered a sequence of compliance alerts that would, in less than 2 days, cascade into total suspension. Damon and his smoothie cult had no idea. To them, it was just another week before their big investor innovation demo. I found out about that through Mia, the one person from product who still had a conscience. She texted around noon. "You didn't hear it from me, but they're doing a full investor showcase Friday. Press, board, global health, everyone. They're calling it a visibility summit." Then she added a popcorn emoji. I could practically hear the chaos brewing. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I clicked open Apex Cloud's public status page. Still green, still boasting 100% uptime, verified SOC2 compliance. The irony hit like sunlight through blinds. They were still flaunting the badge I'd configured, which was live authenticated, meaning it pinged Cloudera every 60 seconds to confirm certification validity, meaning, come Friday, at precisely 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific, that badge was going to check for a valid contact, find none, and fail in front of everyone watching. I sat back, smiled faintly. It wasn't sabotage. It was simply cause and effect. Damon had tossed the key and was about to find out what happens when the lock resets itself. I pictured him prepping his deck, practicing buzzwords like zero latency and distributed scalability in front of a mirror. He thought the biggest threat was a system crash. He had no clue the real risk was bureaucratic, quiet, invisible, a single empty field buried in the compliance metadata. That's the thing about systems built on trust. Remove one node, and the whole architecture collapses. Wednesday night, I walked downtown, ordered Thai takeout, and watched the city blur under streetlights. Somewhere in the Apex office, someone was probably realizing a dashboard permission was missing. Someone else was emailing IT. A ticket was being filed. A call was being scheduled. And none of it would matter. I didn't have to lift a finger. I'd already written the ending. All I had to do was wait for the page to turn itself. By Thursday morning, the first hairline cracks had already formed. I didn't need insider access to know it. You could feel it in the quiet hum of LinkedIn updates and nervous Slack emojis leaking through back channels. Mia texted me again around 9:12 a.m. "They're freaking out," she wrote. "Compliance dashboard isn't refreshing. Badge keeps spinning. Damon says it's a visual bug." I actually laughed out loud. A visual bug. That's what he called it when the very foundation of his multi-million-dollar infrastructure was seconds from crumbling. "Visual bug," I muttered, stirring my coffee. "Sure, Damon." I pictured him standing in front of that glass-walled conference room, probably rallying his troops with another pep talk about ownership and accountability. The same buzzwords he weaponized to cut me loose. Only now, ownership meant something else. Specifically, the one thing Apex Cloud no longer had over its compliance systems. By now, Cloudera's automation had already dispatched the first warning email. "Please assign new technical contact within 24 hours to avoid suspension." No human intervention, no reminders, just the clock ticking toward zero. And the best part? Their big investor demo was scheduled for hour 47. I didn't have to do anything. Gravity was doing the work for me. I scrolled through my inbox, half expecting a desperate message. Sure enough, one popped up. From a junior analyst in finance, barely out of college. Subject: quick sanity check. The email was painfully polite. "Hi, Leah. Sorry to bother you post-departure, but I was reviewing our Cloudera configs and noticed a few fields under contact verification are blank. Probably nothing. Just wanted to double-check in case I'm missing something." Smiley face at the end. Bless him. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then locked my phone. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because silence was power. The moment I answered, I'd imply obligation, and they'd twist it into offboarding support. No thank you. They made their decision. Let them live with it. I went for a walk instead. Earbuds in, sky washed pale by Seattle's late spring drizzle. Somewhere between the sound of traffic and lo-fi beats, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just steady, focused, like watching a controlled demolition from a safe distance. I'd built Apex Cloud's compliance backbone so meticulously that it could function, or fail, without emotion. Every clause, every audit trail, every contact designation had a purpose. Damon thought I was replaceable because he never read the paperwork beneath the marketing deck. The irony was poetic. Protect against human error. That's what the audit teams always said, and that's exactly what I'd done. The system was protecting itself from their incompetence. I imagined the night before the demo. Some poor DevOps engineer refreshing dashboards, watching status lights blink red. An error appearing. Compliance verification pending. Contact unverified. Suspension in 6812 MIM. The panic that must have rippled through their Slack channels. Screenshots flying, question marks flooding, Damon typing in all caps. "Fix this now." Maybe someone tried to call Cloudera support. I could picture the automated voice replying, "We require a named technical contact to proceed." Silence on the other end. Then the realization. Damon had fired the only person who qualified as one. I set my coffee mug down, exhaling slowly. Somewhere in the Apex building, people were burning through espresso pods, pretending this was just another late-night bug hunt. But this wasn't a bug. It was the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect compliance integrity by freezing out anyone unauthorized. Thursday evening, Mia texted again. Official message from Damon. Big day tomorrow. Demo starts 10 a.m. sharp. Investors plus global health. All hands on deck. Then another. A meme someone posted in the chat. That cartoon dog surrounded by flames saying, "This is fine." Damon's reply. Just pray AWS doesn't crash. I had to walk away from my screen to stop laughing. He really thought Amazon was his biggest problem. He still didn't understand. The danger wasn't external. It was internal. It was me. Or rather, the absence of me. The irony was almost art. Less than 12 hours left. Friday arrived crisp and quiet, the kind of morning that almost tricks you into thinking the world is merciful. I brewed coffee, opened the blinds, and checked the clock. 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes until showtime. Somewhere across town, in a conference room full of glass, caffeine, and self-congratulation, Damon was probably straightening his blazer and checking his reflection in the Zoom preview window. The investor demo of the year. The Apex Visibility Summit. A $200 million performance. I leaned back in my chair, tea steaming beside me, and opened my laptop. Not to watch, just to feel the air change. 9:58. My phone buzzed. Mia, again. It's starting. The text was followed by another. A screenshot of the Zoom waiting room, investors, board members. Global Health's executive team front row. I could almost smell the cologne of overconfidence from here. Then came the third message. They're live. The description that followed read like theater. Damon smiled his well-rehearsed smile. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice polished and falsely calm. We're thrilled to showcase the next evolution of Apex Cloud systems. Secure, scalable, seamless. I actually mouthed along with him, the trifecta of lies. Behind him, on the big shared screen, the dashboard pulsed to life. Charts, uptime graphs, API latency lines, all perfectly fake, all perfectly temporary. I knew what was coming. Around slide 7, the script always switched to the real-time compliance demo. Damon's favorite flourish. Let's show you what enterprise trust looks like in action, he always said. I could almost hear it. 10:07 a.m. The cursor moved toward the browser tab labeled Client Portal Live. Click. For 2 heartbeats, everything held steady. Then, hiccup. A single frozen frame. The graphs stopped moving. CPU gauge stuck at 99.97%. The compliance badge spinner twitched once, then began looping infinitely. And then, gray. Total blank. Not an error, not a crash, just absence. The kind of silence that swallows a room whole. Damon's smile flickered. I imagined the investors leaning forward, the CEO furrowing his brow, someone whispering, "Is that a live feed?" And then, inevitably, the question that sliced through the air like a scalpel. Where's the compliance badge? I could practically hear the oxygen leave the room. Mia's messages came fast now. He's refreshing. Nothing's loading. They're panicking. Then the line that made me set my mug down. Error message just popped up. I knew the one. Every engineer in the building was seeing it right then. Access suspended. Contact unverified. Please refer to certification administrator. Damon froze. His mic picked up a small, involuntary exhale. The kind of sound a person makes when they realize the floor beneath them isn't real. I didn't smile. Not yet. I wanted to witness the moment properly. Mia's next text was almost cinematic. Someone new just joined the call. A second later. It's Cloudera. My pulse slowed. I pictured her instantly. Melissa Tran, Senior Compliance Liaison. The kind of woman who could ruin an empire without raising her voice. Mia described it perfectly. She unmuted like a guillotine. "Hello, everyone," she said, calm as protocol. "Sorry to interrupt. Cloudera Systems has initiated an emergency suspension of Apex Cloud's compliance services due to a technical contact lockout. Every syllable precise, rehearsed by the machine of bureaucracy itself. Damon stammered, "What? There must be a mistake." But Melissa continued, clipboard steady. The named technical contact of record for all active certifications resigned earlier this week. No replacement was submitted within the 48-hour window. Per SOC2 protocol, verification points have been disabled and compliance status is now suspended. A pause. A beat. Mia's next message. You could hear people gasp. Somewhere, the boardroom turned to ice. The investors stopped blinking. Global Health's lead counsel leaned forward and asked the question that would detonate everything. Does this mean our service contract is in breach? Melissa's reply, yes, effective immediately. I leaned back in my chair and finally smiled, small and quiet, like someone closing a book after the last line lands exactly the way it should. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that hums louder than noise. Damon blinked once, twice, his mouth working soundlessly like a fish yanked out of its tank. On screen, Apex Cloud's CEO, Victor Lang, leaned so close to his webcam the room could see nothing but one magnified eye and confusion. Wait, he said slowly. What does that mean for us exactly? Melissa didn't flinch. It means your SOC2 certification is inactive, she replied, tone cool as stainless steel. Per your client agreements, you are temporarily out of compliance. Integration endpoints have been suspended until a verified contact transition and recertification are complete. She might as well have been reading an obituary. The reaction was instant chaos. People talking over one another. A lawyer flipping through a printed contract so violently the mic caught the rustle. Someone from Global Health spoke up, her voice sharp enough to cut the static. Section 7.3 of our MSA states continuous compliance is mandatory. Any lapse exceeding 12 hours constitutes material breach. Another investor, voice rising. So, our funds? Melissa nodded, polite and merciless. Payments may be withheld until compliance is restored. And there it was, the detonation. One clause, one timer, one missing name. Damon's empire of dashboards and buzzwords disintegrated in real time. He tried to regain composure, face shiny with panic, muttering something about a temporary credential issue. But it was already over. The investors weren't listening to him. They were watching Melissa. Calm, unshakable Melissa, the embodiment of the rulebook he'd ignored. Somewhere in the Zoom grid, someone muted their mic, probably to curse. Victor tried one last attempt at control. Can we fix this today? Melissa's answer landed like a hammer. No, sir. The recertification process typically takes 2 to 4 weeks. 2 to 4 weeks. The demo was meant to open a $200 million funding round. Now it had slammed that door shut with mathematical precision. I could almost hear the digital ripple as every participant mentally rewrote their afternoon. Lawyers drafting breach notices, accountants freezing transfers, PR teams deleting scheduled press releases. By noon, the story had already leaked inside the company. Mia's texts came in bursts. Finance is melting down, investors pulling. Someone just said, "We're ruined," out loud. I set my phone aside and poured myself another cup of coffee. The taste was calm, deliberate. This wasn't gloating. This was gravity completing its work. At 2:13 p.m., Mia sent the screenshot that sealed it. Exhibit G, buried deep in Global Health's contract. I'd written that clause myself 3 years ago, after an auditor nearly derailed onboarding. SOC2 certification must remain active and uninterrupted for the duration of this agreement. Any lapse exceeding 12 hours constitutes material breach and authorizes client to suspend payments without penalty. There it was, the quiet trigger that had just unraveled an empire. They're at 5 hours offline now, Mia wrote. Global Health just froze payments. Another text. Investor group backed out. The dominoes were falling exactly as designed. Damon had thought he was cutting fat. He'd actually severed the spinal cord. By evening, I watched the aftermath unfold across LinkedIn. Sanitized statements, vague apologies, executives changing job titles. We're pivoting our strategy to refocus on sustainable growth. Translation: we're bleeding out. At 6:40 p.m., one last message from Mia. Damon hasn't posted since 4. Last thing he wrote: can someone contact Cloudera? There must be an override. I whispered it to myself, softly. There isn't. There never was. Because the override was me. I didn't feel triumph, exactly. Just the kind of deep, still satisfaction that comes from watching the truth reveal itself. I'd been labeled non-essential, and yet, the absence of my name had erased their foundation. I closed my laptop and stood by the window, city lights flickering against the dusk. In the quiet reflection on the glass, I didn't see a victim. I saw the architect who designed the load-bearing wall and watched fools knock it down. By Saturday morning, Apex Cloud was digital wreckage scattered across the internet. The company's public status page had gone gray overnight, every system temporarily unavailable. On LinkedIn, employees were updating job titles faster than recruiters could refresh searches. Posts like "Grateful for my time at Apex Cloud," "On to new beginnings," popped up in waves, each one a small confession disguised as optimism. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight filtering through blinds, a half-empty mug cooling beside my laptop. I didn't smile. Not yet. My inbox was overflowing, not with apologies from Apex, but with opportunities. Subject lines from compliance directors, CTOs, venture-backed startups. Saw what happened. We should talk. Another read. Building a real infrastructure team. You'd lead it. And then there was the one that made me pause. From Victor Lang, Apex Cloud's CEO. Subject: can we talk? No punctuation, no warmth, just 5 tired words from a man who finally understood gravity. I didn't open it. Not yet. I knew what it said. Half an apology, half a plea, maybe an offer to consult. The same language used by people who mistake regret for accountability. I leaned back and watched the city outside breathe, traffic pulsing under a clean blue sky. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was balance. They'd built an empire on borrowed trust, and I'd simply reclaimed what was mine, the integrity of my own work. When I'd walked out with that cactus and coffee mug, I wasn't angry. I was patient. Because real revenge doesn't explode. It unravels quietly, methodically, until the truth stands naked in daylight. I took another sip and opened one of the recruiter emails, a firm in Denver specializing in healthcare compliance automation. The subject line read, "We value people who design systems that can't be faked." I smiled, small but genuine. That was the first line that made sense all week. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. Mia, of course. Board emergency meeting lasted 6 hours, she wrote. Victor blamed Damon. Damon blamed legal. Legal blamed HR. HR blamed miscommunication. Then another message. They still don't understand what actually happened. I typed back. They don't need to. Because explaining it would ruin the poetry. The truth was simple. They had treated governance like window dressing, compliance like paperwork, and me like filler text between buzzwords. They forgot that the quiet work is the architecture. They fired the lock and kept the door. And when it fell open, they called it a system failure. I turned my phone face down and watched the clouds shift over the city skyline. A small breeze rattled the blinds, carrying the faint scent of rain. I thought about those 6 years, the long nights patching bugs, the midnight audit calls, the way my pulse always quickened before a Soki 2 submission went live. None of it had been glamorous. No applause, no bonuses, no awards. But it was real. It mattered. And the day they erased my name, they erased the only part of the company that was real. I finally opened Victor's email. The message was exactly what I expected. Corporate remorse painted in diplomacy. We made a mistake. The board would like to discuss reinstatement or transition consulting terms at your convenience. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type a word. Instead, I deleted it. There was nothing left to salvage. Apex Cloud wasn't my problem anymore. They'd made their bed in buzzwords. I'd simply removed the foundation holding it up. I closed the laptop and walked to the window again. The afternoon light had shifted golden, catching my reflection. My face looked calm, distant, almost unreadable. The same way I looked in that conference room when Damon said non-essential. I thought about how easily they'd underestimated me, how quickly they'd forgotten that systems remember what people forget. Real revenge doesn't need noise. It needs precision. You write the rules, build the walls, and when they forget your name, you let gravity do the rest. I poured the last of my coffee, raised the mug to the empty skyline, and whispered, "Cheers. Compliance." Then I smiled. Small, final, unshakable. Because somewhere downtown, a boardroom full of men was still staring at blank dashboards, wondering how a single missing name brought down their $200 million dream. And the truth? I hadn't lifted a finger. I'd just walked away.